This technology should be used with caution. Always provide notice when distributing machine learning generated content. Welcome to part 1 of my 3-part series for how to create an automated blog. In this video, we're going to take you through what it takes to create the backend component of this application. So here we have a template that I've created in order to help you build this application. So full disclosure, this template makes reference to a service that I provide, which is to set up the Google Cloud infrastructure for an automated VM to run this code. You do not need an automated VM to run this code, but it's definitely a nice thing to have. And if you want to put into production, it's the recommended way of doing it. So let's start by just using this template, and we'll get a local version of it on my workspace. So I'll click this button and I will create a template in my organization because I will be making this code public, so you can clone the repository and not have to copy the code from this video. So I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it automated blog. And for now, it'll be private, but I'll switch it to public once we're done writing the code. By the way, if I'm looking over in this direction, it's because I have some notes just for some of the annoying little details that we're going to have to implement. Okay, so the first step is to clone this template. Clone the repository that we just created from our template. And I'll open up my terminal. I'm already in my area where I want to clone the repository to. So I will just do git clone and then put in the automated blog. Okay. And I'm going to move into that directory. And we'll do a git log just to see that we're up to date. And yes, we see that we have our initial commit right here. So let's open up PyCharm, and that's going to be our development environment that I'm using. And we'll get the project set up. Okay. So this is what you're going to see when you first open up this template if you decide to write your code from scratch, or you can use this template for any other automated code that you need to write. I'll just take you through it quickly. I'll leave you to read this README file on your own time. So let's just go through what we have included here. First of all, there's some maintenance scripts that you can see here. And these are different scripts that you would use if you purchase my other service, which actually allows you to deploy this code onto a virtual machine quickly. So I won't go through those now, but I'll go through them in the second part of this series where we'll go through deploying this code on the virtual machine service. The third video in this series will be actually loading the blog content that we're going to create in this video onto my website. And you can follow that along in that video if you're interested. So what we're going to do now is just show you the entry point. So scheduler hook here is the entry point if you're going to build off of this template. You can see I have some instructions here. I'll just read it out. This function gets called by a cron tab shortly after the virtual machine in Google Cloud Platform wakes up. Users of this script should either build their application on top of the script directly, or copy the hook directory in this repository into an existing repository and modify this execute function to import and call your existing code. So we're option 1 here, which is to build our application on top of this template directly. So we're going to start by just modifying this code and creating some new packages that will actually create our automated blog content for us. So the first thing, let's set up this code to run locally and make sure that it's running. So in order to do that, we're going to have to add a configuration. So we can right click on the scheduler hook and then hit run scheduler hook. This is going to fail because we need to set it up. So we can click up here to edit configurations. I don't have an interpreter set up because we have to do that now. So first thing, Python interpreter. So we can close that. Open up our terminal, and we want to create a virtual environment. So we're going to do python mvenv.env. That will create our virtual environment inside of this repository. And this is already git ignored, so you don't have to worry about adding this to the git ignore. And if we just click back to this here, you'll see that the virtual environment folder shows up. And next thing, we're going to want to modify our configuration. So we're going to back out this hook directory since our entry point is inside this hook package. And then we've already got this set up. So you can see git space, my website, automatedblog.env. That's the one we just created. If this doesn't show up for you, I will show you how to get that to show up right now. So what you would do is you go into File, and then you go into Settings, and then you can come down to your project, whatever you call it, and Python interpreter. And then you'd click on the gear and you'd hit Add. And then you can go down to existing environment since we already created it in our terminal. And you would search for your environment. So if I go my website, automatedblog.env, scripts, and I think it would just be the python.exe. And that would be if it doesn't automatically load it. Okay, so now that that's done, let's run this and see if our hello world code starts. So it worked. You'll see we've got our log statement saying that the script has started, our hello world, and another log statement saying that the script has ended. One thing I want to point out now is because we're using a Python logger, we have set up a log directory, and it should load in here. Let's see. Yeah, there. So I just had to refresh, reload from disk here. And you'll see that we've got our logs logged to a file, and this is a rotating log. So this is really useful if you end up deploying this to a virtual machine in Google Cloud. You can download the logs using those maintenance scripts I was referencing before to see what went wrong, if anything went wrong, or to see what went right. So let's get started. We're going to create a new package because I don't want to put anything inside this hook folder. We're going to create a new one, new Python package, and I guess we'll just call it blog. So we'll say blog. I'm going to add this to Git later. Then we can create our entry point for our actual application code. I'm just going to say main.py. So we're going to create a class first, and then we'll write out some comments so that you know what it is that we're trying to build out. I'm going to call it blog factory, and we can have an init that we'll fill out in a second. And we're going to pass in a configuration, but for now we'll just pass this init. We'll fill out the configuration in a minute. And then the other thing we want to do is make our entry point. So I'll just call it create blog post. And let's write out some comments for what we want to do here. So the first thing is we're going to want to scrape the web for topics. Second thing, we're going to want to pass the topics that we've scraped. So these are going to be titles of news articles to a model. And we're going to use a model called gpt-neo. gpt-neo is an open source language model that's been pre-trained, so you can just use it super easily with a wrapper that Hugging Face developed. So that's the second thing, and that's going to create our content. And 3, we're going to upload the content to a JSON file in cloud storage. So for me, I'm using Google Cloud Storage with a CDN to serve content to my website. So we'll do it that way. And obviously you can modify this to your own solutions fairly easily. Okay, so that's the three main pieces. So before we get into actually writing the application code, let's create a configuration, because we're going to have some parameters that we might want to tweak as we develop this code. And the configuration file will be something that we upload to the virtual machine in video 2. So let's go back first to our hook directory and go into our schedule hook. Now that we know that this is working, we can delete this hello world code, and we can think about how we want to set up our configuration. So I think I'm going to create another package called configurations, where we'll hold all of our configuration logic. So configurations, and I'm going to say create a new file, call it config.py. And we're going to use the Python config parser in order to manage our configurations. So there's going to be a few things that we want. I'm going to first create the functions. So get config, we'll call it. And this function will determine and load the correct config file based on an environment variable. Okay, and so the first thing we're going to need, since we want to load the file based on a name provided in an environment variable, we're going to import OS. And then since we're using config parser, we're going to import config parser. And because I like doing type declarations, I'm going to do from config parser import config parser. And so actually I don't need this part here. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to determine what the active configuration should be, because you might want to have multiple different configurations depending on if you're using multiple environments. Let's say you have a development and a production environment. In this case, I'm just going to go straight to production, but best practice is to create a development environment first, test it in the development environment, and then deploy it to production. So active config is going to be equal to os.environment, and then we get to just say whatever key we want to save the active config in. So I'll just say active config. Now that we have the active configuration, we can create a config parser. So config equals config parser. And we're going to load in our configuration from our configuration file. So config.read. And then we're going to say, we're going to use an f string because we're going to have this be parameterized by this environment variable. And we're going to say that our configuration file will be stored in our configuration package. So configurations / and then we're going to say the active config .config, because we're going to create the config file next. And then we can just return our config. And so we can add a space here, add a space here, a new line. And I think that should be okay. Let's just add our type declaration, our return type declaration. And that should be fine. So now let's create our configuration file. And we're just going to name it prod.config since I said we're going direct to prod. And we're going to create a section in our config. Of course, feel free to make this whatever you like if you're going to do this on your own, but I'm just going to call it general for now until I get a better sense of what we might put in here and how we might distinguish sections. And we'll fill this out as we go along. But for now, let's edit our configurations to add our environment variable so that we know that we're going to use the production one. So active config, I think that's what I called it. And then we're going to say prod. Let's just double check. So, oops. Yeah, active config and active config and prod because we're saying prod.config. Okay, so let's go back to our schedule hook and we can activate the config in a few different places. Let's just do it in this section right here. So first thing, before we get on to the actual business logic, config, and we're going to say config parser, which means we're going to have to import it, equals our get config, and we'll import all this stuff in just a second here. So I'll go up here, from configurations, import, get configuration. Oh, sorry, configurations dot config, import get config. And from config parser, import config parser. And then this should work now. So now we have access to our config, which means anything we put in this prod.config, so I'll say example equals test. So we can access this variable through this config parser. And I'll show you how to do that once we actually go to use it. So the next thing, we're going to call our blog factory that we started in here in our main.py. So in order to do that, we need to import from blog.main import blog factory. So we're going to create an instance of our blog factory. And we're going to say it equals this. And we're going to pass in our config because we're going to know we want that, or we know we're going to want that, excuse me. And then we can say blog factory dot create blog post because we're going to want to create our blog posts. And since we haven't accepted the config yet, let's do that. By the way, when I quickly go into this blog factory, I'm doing it by holding Control and then clicking on it. So now we're into our init method, and we can say we want to accept a config. And we're going to call it a config parser because that's the class that's being passed, or the objects that's being passed. So from config parser, import config parser. And we're going to just set self.config equals config. Cool. So now within this class, we have access to this config in no matter what function or method we want without passing it explicitly into that function. So I guess we'll outline the different functions that we're going to use or that we're going to fill out. So we'll just give them names and start filling them out. First one is find topics, because we're going to find the topics from the web. So we're going to make it a private method, find topics. And this thing is going to find topics using Google search news. And then the second one is going to be generate content. And we're going to say this function accepts topics and generates fake blog content for those topics. Okay, and the last one, we're going to say upload content. And obviously this function is going to upload the blog contents to Google Cloud Storage as a JSON file. Okay, so this is really all we're going to have to fill out. So let's start on Find Topics. I guess the first thing we're going to want to do is call Find Topics in our create blog post. So we can say topics, and it's going to be in the format of a list of dictionaries because I'm going to have some metadata associated with the topics that I want to preserve so that I can post it on the website or in the blog page. So it's going to be a list of dictionaries. So we're going to have to import the list from typing. From typing, import list. And this is going to be filled out from find topics. Self.find topics. And that means this function is going to have to return a list of dictionaries. Okay, I guess we'll fill this out now. So a few things that we're going to use in order to actually extract these topics from the internet. First thing, we're going to use the request library to actually do the search. And then we're going to use Beautiful Soup to parse the tree that we get returned and find our title and find our link, because I want to link back to the original article that I'm making the fake article off of. So in order to do that, let's first import requests. Import requests. And import Beautiful Soup. And neither of these libraries are included by default in Python, so we're going to have to add them to our requirements and install them to our virtual environment. So anyways, from BS4 it will be, I'm going to import Beautiful Soup. And once we install these errors will go away. So let's do that now. Where you're going to want to install your packages or list your packages that you want to install is in this requirements.txt file. And you'll see I have an example here, but we're going to not use NumPy for this. We are going to use requests and Beautiful Soup. So let me just find the versions that I want. So Beautiful Soup 4, and the version number we're going to use is 4.9.3. And we're going to use the requests library. And the version number is going to be 2.26.0. And we can go ahead and install those in our virtual environment. So first thing to do is we need to activate our virtual environment because right now it's not active, at least not active in the context of this terminal. So we're going to do .env scripts activate. This will be slightly different potentially if you're on a Mac, but you can always do like an ls and then, or an lsla and then a cd into the .env just to see where the activate file is. So we've already got that working, so we don't need to do that. You can see that the environment is active because this piece here has shown up on top of our terminal. So now we can install the requirements to our virtual environment. So we're going to do pip install -r requirements.txt, and those will install. Okay, so that's successful. And if we come back here, these should eventually not be highlighted because we've installed them, but it looks like PyCharm's being a little slow. Okay, we're back. So I think it should be okay now. It's doing some indexing. From here, it should be from BS4 import beautiful soup, not import beautiful soup, or import BS4 import beautiful soup. Anyways, we can move on. So the next thing we want to do is do our request. So let me show you what it is that we're going to be scraping exactly. Let me open up a tab. So we're going to say, let's just search ML News to start. First thing, let's go to this news tab because we're going to want to get new topics every day. And if we're just on the all tab, it's going to give us like recommended sites that probably won't change day over day. So we're going to want the news tab. And we're going to modify this query parameter to not have all this gobbledygook in it that we don't need. So let's do that. So the first thing, we're definitely going to want this query for ML plus news. And so we can remove the rest of this and then think about what else we want. Right, we want the query for ML news, and we want TBM equals NWS. That means we're on the news tab, like we have selected here. So we're going to want both of those. And we can get rid of the rest of it. So let's try that. Just make sure that it works. And yes, we've got a nice short URL that we can use. So let's go ahead and use that. One of the things that we might want to have is a config for the query that we're using because we might want to change it. So let's create a new entry in our configuration for the query, the topic query. So we'll just call it topic query. And for now, we'll just say ML News. And we can go back and start filling out find topics. So first, we're going to use the request library. So r equals requests.get. We're going to use an f string again, and we're going to turn this query parameter into our config, a query selected from our config. And I think the rest should be okay. So let's do self.config.get. And we're going to say we want from the general section. And then we want, what did we call it? Topic query. Topic query. And we can turn the outer quotes into double quotes so that this f string works properly. And now we've got our request. So the next thing we're going to want, so in order to extract the actual content from this request, we need to do .content. And then we're going to want to make a soup out of the content. And we can say beautiful soup. We're going to have the content, or I should say, let's say content here, because we have extracted the content. Put this on a new line, that on a new line. Okay. Beautiful soup content. And we're going to have to specify a parser. So we're going to say html.parser. And then let's see how we're going to extract the actual content that we want from this page. So if we right click on one of these articles and inspect, we can see that there's a class associated with that inspection. But one of the things I've noticed in the past is that depending on how you're doing the request, this class might return differently. So we're going to do the inspection manually right now in the code. So let's do that. Okay, so let's do a breakpoint here. You can do that by just typing next or clicking next to the numbers here, and we'll run the debugger just so that we can get up to this point. No section general. Let's see. So we've got an error. Oh, it should be this. Okay, let's rerun. Oops. Okay, so now we're on a breakpoint just after we've done our request query, and we can see this is the HTML that was returned. And let's actually find this exact text so we can search it in our response here. Okay, so here's the first reference to it. Let's just see if there's any other references. Doesn't seem to be. In which case, we can just take this class name right here. This is the class name we're going to use to scrape all the titles. And if we want, we can double check to see that those class names are the same, no matter which of these articles we're referring to. And just by looking at it here, it looks like it would, because even though the class name is different on this page through the browser compared to through the request library, they are the same here. So they should be the same there, but we'll just double check by searching this string in our response. And we'll do that. And you can see, I think it looks the same. Yeah. Okay. So let's use that. All right. So now that we've got that, we can just cancel this program from running and we can keep coding. So in order to get our topics, we're going to say topics equals soup.findAll, because we're going to want to extract all of the titles from this query. And we're going to say it's a div because it was a div. And we're going to give it also this class name. And hopefully that returns us all of our topics. I guess we can run that specific piece of code and see if it works. But let's maybe just do some error handling first. So if we don't get anything from our topics find all, we're going to want to probably raise an error, because our automated blog isn't going to do anything if there's no topics to write about. So I'll just say if len of topics, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be some sort of list or list-like, is equal to 0, then we're going to say, we're going to raise an exception. And we'll just say something like no topics available or query. And then we can just copy this. And actually we'll move it out here. So query string equals that. And that way we can use it once in here and once down below in our error for query. And we'll turn this into an f string, just like that. Okay, now let's put a breakpoint here and just double check that this returns some topics. So you can see it looks like a result set, which seems to be a list like. And yeah, we've got a bunch of different HTML tags with our class name, which is the same across all the titles, with our topic title in it. So that worked. And then I also want to get the link of the actual true article, or we think it's true. It might not be true. It might be auto-generated as well. But anyways, yeah, we're going to try and get the link out. So in order to do that, we can traverse the beautiful soup tree, but we might as well do that in a loop that we're going to create to create our dictionary, our list of dictionaries. So we're going to say for topic in topics. And first thing is we're going to want to find the link. So find the link to the original article. And in order to do that, I think we can use find parent. So original link equals topic, because we were iterating through the topics, dot find parent, I believe it is. Find parent. Find underscore parent. And we're going to say we want to get the A tag because that's our link. And we're going to want to get the href component. Sorry, I don't think that's right. Yeah, we should do get.get and then href because we want to get the href attribute from this tag. And we're using find parent because if we go back to our tree here, I saw that the href referring to this article is actually a parent of our title component here. So yeah, we need to find the parent, the closest parent, which is up here. So from that, we should have an href, but let's just double check that. I could log it, or we can just put a breakpoint down to here and then execute it manually. So let's just do that. Okay, so let's copy this line, open up our evaluate expression, and evaluate that. So yeah, so sometimes you'll find with a scraping like this that when you open the href, it doesn't provide you an exact like URL. You'd want, like, it seems like this is a path with a query string to the actual URL, but we don't want this part because we can't just, like, we don't want to link that. It won't be clickable. So we just want the https:// and then the rest of it. So in order to do that, we can just use a regex to extract the URL piece of the string. And I have one already written down because I thought that this might be a problem. So I'll just copy it over. And obviously there's a multiple different regexes that you could use that would probably work as well. But I just found this one online and it seems to work okay. So I'm not going to do a full evaluation of the regex to make sure that it covers all the edge cases right now, but feel free to do that. So I'll just copy this one here. Cool. So we're going to say, well, first of all, we need to import the regex library, but I'm just going to replace this original link reference with this regex thing. And we're going to import regex. Actually, let's do it at the top. RE, okay. And so let's just do that. Fix that spacing. And this is probably complaining about some sort of formatting, but I'm pretty sure I've already tested this, so I think it should work. I'm just going to leave that. Now we've got this we can try. So, right, let's rerun the debugger. Because when you debug, it's not going to load the new imports. So let's check that. There, now you see that it's extracted off just the relevant portion of the URL, and that's all we want. So, okay, from there, I guess all we need to do is compose our dictionary. So in order to do that, first since we said we're doing a list of dictionaries, let's create our list. So I'll just say topic list or something like that equals an empty list, and then we can start appending to it. So topic list.append, and we're going to add dictionaries, and we're going to have a title with the topic text in it. So just make sure it's a string, topic.text, and it'll extract this. YouTube uses AI and ML to block offensive content and/or. So we'll do that. And then the other thing we wanted was our link. And we can say just the original link. We already know it's a string. Okay, and the last thing, we can just return our topics. Return topic list. Cool, so that It's that function written. Let's just debug that and double check that that works as we expect. Okay, topic list, view. So we've got a bunch of dictionaries in a list, and it looks okay to me. So let's go with that. Let's move on to the next function, generate content. So this is where we're actually going to pass these topics to our model, and we're going to generate the actual content of our fake blog. So let's move down. Okay, so we're going to need to install some new requirements. We're using Hugging Face. So let's go to our requirements.txt. We're going to use the transformers library. Transformers. And this is from Hugging Face, and it's going to be 4.9.1. And we're also going to need Torch. I tried this one component earlier, and it doesn't work with TensorFlow 2 because this model is not trained for a TensorFlow 2 backend. So you need Torch, unfortunately. So we're just going to use the CPU version of Torch for now. There's a couple reasons for that. One is I don't have a new enough GPU on this machine that I'm working on in order to run the GPU version of Torch. And the other thing is it might be cheaper to run the CPU version because we're just doing inference. We're not doing training. So it might be cheaper if you deploy this to the cloud with a CPU. That might not be so true because obviously you're trading off runtime for not having a GPU. So you'd have to test it to see which is actually cheaper. But anyways, if you want to do the GPU implementation, you can figure that out yourself. It shouldn't be too hard. And you'd probably have to do some additional setup on the virtual machine. But again, these are all things that you can find out how to do online. So let's do Torch, and we're going to use version 1.9.0. And we'll install these requirements right now. This might take a bit of time, so it might I might pause the video, but we'll do pip install -r requirements.txt again. And I'll be back when this is finished installing. All right, we're back. So our package is finished installing, and we can now start writing this code. So first thing, we're going to use the pipeline, I guess, package from the transformers modules, which we need to import that first. So we'll do from transformers import pipeline. And this is probably one of the easiest usages of an ML model you'll find anywhere. So you might be surprised at how easy it is to actually create this automated blog. Okay, so all we need to do is say generator equals our pipeline. And we can say we're going to do text generation. And then we just say what model we want to use. So we're going to say model equals, and then the model name is Eleuther AI / GPT-neo -2.7b for 2.7 billion parameters. I believe that's what that stands for anyways. Okay, and then let's make our content list. Let's specify the parameters that this function needs. So the first thing, it's going to take in our topic list, and that's going to be a list of dictionaries. And the other thing it's going to take in is the length of the content that we're going to want to create, because we might want to make short articles or long articles, and we might change it. So let's just say desired length equals, actually let's call it first, it's going to be an integer, and we're going to say as a default, let's just make it 5,000. So that'll be 5,000 characters long, not 5,000 words. Okay, so now let's create our content list, because we're going to return a list of dictionaries as well, because this list of dictionaries is going to be passed to our upload content, and each dictionary is going to get converted into JSON and get put in a cloud storage bucket. So we'll just say content list equals an empty list, because we're going to start appending to it once we're done. And we're going to say for topic in topic list, and we're going to make some content. So content is going to be equal to our generator, and we're going to pass in our title. So topic at title, and we're going to say do sample is true, min length, which is the min length of the sequence that we're going to produce. We're just going to set that arbitrarily to 64, and our max length, which is the max length of the sequence that we're going to generate, we can set it to, I don't know, something like 512. But you know what? Let's make this into something configurable. So in order to do that, let's go back to our configuration, and we'll make another thing called max sequence length, and we'll set that to 512. We're going to want this now back here. We're going to do self.config.get. We can do an int this time, get int, so it'll automatically do the type conversion from a string to an int. And we can say general and then max sequence length. And I think that's all. So let's just go ahead and see what that produces first. So we'll just set up a breakpoint there, run it. First we have to call this generate content actually. So generate content up in here. Content list dict equals self dot generate content topics equal topic list. Topic list is what it's expecting, equals topics. And desired length, we'll just leave empty since we have a default there for now. Okay, and what else do we have to do? I guess that's it. So let's try that. Run the breakpoint. What do we have here? Let's see. Eleuther AI, GPT-neo. Did I spell this wrong? Yeah, I spelled it wrong. My bad. Let's correct that. ELEUTHER AI / GPT-neo. Oh, you know what? This might take a second, but let's go. Because it might have to download the model. Let's see. I guess I'll come back when this is done. Okay, we're back, and let's try executing this. By the way, I didn't download the model because I had already downloaded this model while I was testing earlier. So be prepared to download about a 10 gig model. Hopefully this generates something in a decent amount of time. Again, it's going to be slower because we're not running on a GPU. So I guess I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so we're back, and I realized that the debugger is not a great place to execute this because it's going to time out waiting for the response. So let's just try and add a new line here and then run it to the new line. I'll just print the response for now. Actually, just so I can show you how to do this properly, let's import our logger so that you can log to a log file as well. So it's going to follow the same pattern as inside the scheduler hook. So we can just copy this line and paste it here. And now we can use our logger. So we'll say logger.info, and we'll say content. Content, and we can say this here. Actually, we don't even need the content. Let's just do that. And we'll run it without the debugger. Okay, I'll let you know when it's done. Okay, I'm back. So it was taking a bit of time. So I actually just went into the prod.config and changed the max sequence length down to 128. Obviously, when I deploy this, I'll probably use a longer sequence length because sequence length is going to determine somewhat how good the outcome is. Because the shorter the sequence length, the less context the model can take into account when it's generating more of the sequence. So yeah, so now this is what our response is. We can look here. We've got a list of dictionaries, it looks like, but there's only one dictionary in this list. So what we're going to do is we're going to access the first element in the list, and then we're going to access the generated text component of the dictionary, and that'll be how we access our final content. So now from there, we can move on to the next part. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that our blog content is a certain length, because we don't want it to just be like a single paragraph. That's kind of a useless fake blog. So we're going to say while the length of the content is less than the desired length, which we had set with that default up there, desired length, then we can keep adding to it, essentially. So we're going to do the content is equal to the generator again. But this time, instead of passing the topic title, because we've already prompted the model once, you see here some examples. So yeah, instead of just prompting the model with the title again, because that would be kind of dumb, we're going to take what the model generated and recursively feed that back to the model in order to generate a longer blog post. So we're going to say content, and then we're going to say, we're not going to pass the entire content context because that'll overflow the model. We're just going to pass in the max sequence length of the model. So we're going to copy this over here and to the end of the string. So this is saying it's like negative indexing, right? So you're going from the end of the list back the max sequence length allotted characters, and then we're passing that to the model to prompt it for the next part of the sequence. And then we're going to have to copy this part again because it's going to produce that same format here. And this should be plus equals because we're adding to our content. And that should be it. So now we can make our content dictionary. So, and yeah, you can see it's still running here with the token size of 128. So, the max sequence size of 128. Right, so let's create our dictionary. First thing we're going to want is basically the same stuff that was up here, the title and the link. We're going to extract those from the topic. And we're going to also want the content now that we've created it. And there's a more compact way to do this, but I'm not going to do that now because it's just confusing. So I'll say content is equal to the content. And this is now going to be the topic.link. I guess I can say link. And this is going to be the topic at the title. Right? Okay, so that's our content dictionary. And the last thing we can do is maybe we'll want to see that the content is being generated on the virtual machine once we get there. So I'll just logger the content dictionary. And then I'll return first we have to append this content dictionary to the content list because we're doing a list of dictionaries. So we'll do content list dot append, and we'll say the content dictionary. And now we can return the content list. Cool. So that's it for that piece. One thing we might want to do, this is just defaulting to this 5,000. We might want to turn that into a parameter. So a variable here that overrides this variable given the production configuration. So we'll say content length, or let's say desired length. And we'll set it to 5,000 for now because I think it's fine. But we'll load it up here. We're going to do self.config.getInt. And we're going to say it's under the general. And it's going to be desired length. So now this is saying it's unused. So we'll just say DL equals that. And then if DL, then we can override desired length with DL. Cool. Now I'll just add a comment there, set the desired length of the content. Cool. Now this function is done and we can move on to uploading the content. So we're almost there. We're just about to finish. Okay, so this function, we're going to need to use the Google Cloud library and the cloud storage library. And we're going to need to also do some authentication so that I can actually upload to my cloud bucket. So I guess let's just do the install of the requirements first. So I'll open that and I'll get my notes out for the versions that we need. So the version is Google Cloud Storage, and it's 1.41.1. And we'll go ahead and install those requirements again. Okay. Those should not take too long to install. So while those are installing, we can go back to our main and we can, let's fill out our parameters first. So we know for a fact that we're going to pass in our content list. So content list is going to be our list of dictionaries again. And this is going to return us nothing. So I might as well explicitly put that in. And okay, so first thing we need to initialize our client, our Google Cloud Storage client, but that means we're going to have to import our package, which is from google.cloud import storage. And I hope that works. Okay. So I think it's just going to be client equals client, sorry, equals, what was the import? Storage. Yeah. Dot client. And then from that, we're going to get a reference to our bucket. So bucket equals client dot get bucket. We're going to use another config. So we need a config for our bucket ID. So bucket ID equals, in my case, it's going to be Garett MacGowan, I think. Garett MacGowan. Let me just double check that. It's GarettMacGowan.com. Cool. So we're going to need to access our config again. This is not going to be an integer this time. We're just going to do .get. And we called it bucket ID. So we'll copy that in. And I think that's fine. So we've got a client and our bucket reference, and then we're going to iterate through our content list for content and content list. We're going to say file name is going to be our content title, but we're going to want to extract any slashes from that title, because if we don't, it's just going to create a long directory structure inside the Google Cloud bucket. So we're going to do .translate because it's going to be a string. Translate is a built-in string. .make trans. We're going to say empty quotes, string .punctuation. And then we're going to add a suffix to our title. And I'm just going to say bake blog. Maybe I should do... Actually, this is just going to be the file name. So let's not do that here. Let's do that back where the title is supposed to be, which is up here. Title, topic, text, plus that. Because I want to make sure that on my website, it's identified that this is fake content, essentially. So let's do that. And actually, we can make this look a little nicer by turning this into an F string. So first of all, topic.text can go there. And that can go like that. Okay, cool. What's next? So we've just escaped all of the... Not escaped, we've removed the punctuation. And now we just need to create a blob for our bucket. So bucket.blob. And it's going to take in our F string again. It's going to be... I'm going to put it into a folder called automated blog. And this is going to be the folder that my website will look at, list out all the different paths in it to create the different pages dynamically for the blog. So I'll say / file name, and I'll say .json because it's going to be a JSON file. And now we have to convert the dictionary to JSON for file upload. And we're going to do that by saying content string is equal to JSON.dump s dump string. And it's going to be our content, right? The content that we're iterating through in this list. And then we can upload. So we're going to just do blob.upload from string. And we can say we want to pass in the data, which is our content string. And the content type is going to be application/JSON. Now, did we install that requirement already? Not sure if we did or not. Pip install our requirements.text. Okay, it should be installed. It might just be indexing again. Okay, there we go. Got that. And so the next thing we have to do, when we run this, it's going to complain that we don't have authority to upload to this bucket. So we're going to have to create a credentials folder that will hold our keys that we need. So I'm going to say credentials. I'll add a README just so that we can add this to our Git. README.md credentials JSON file should be placed here, both locally and on VM. So once this code starts living on the virtual machine to run on that schedule, we're going to need to have the credential file also placed in this folder on the VM as well as locally if we want to run it locally. So that's fine. I'm going to add this file to Git, I think. So let's just do a git status to see what we have here. Everything makes sense. I'm going to do a git add credentials. And then I'm going to git ignore the credentials because I want to include the README, but I don't want to include any of the files that are inside this folder because that's not very secure. So especially if it's public, which it will be. So let me just add to the git ignore here. Oh, good time to add this prod.config as well. So I'll do configurations /star.config. That'll hide any config files. And now I can also do a credentials section. And we want to git ignore any of the credentials. So, but I've already added the README manually, so I can just do credentials like that. And I think that should be fine. So that'll ignore anything in this directory. So we can close that. Don't need that open. And let's start doing getting the authentication that we need. So we can open up our terminal. And the first thing we want to do is, if you don't have the Google Cloud SDK installed, you'll need to install that. That's an easy search away. Like, I don't need to show you how to do that right now. But so we can, once you have it installed, we can do gcloud projects list to list out our projects. And there we go. There's our projects. And we're going to want to select the project that we're creating these credentials for. So gcloud config list is going to show us which project is active right now. Okay. And right now I'm already active on my Garett MacGowan project, which is the one I'm going to deploy this to. But if you weren't already on your project, you can do gcloud config set project, and then you can do whichever project ID from the list you want to have active. Okay. And then we want to create a service account so that our code here can talk to our Google Cloud storage and make changes. So first thing, gcloud IAM, identity access management, service accounts, create, and then I'm going to create a name for that service account. It's going to be automated blog service account. And once that's done, okay, that's done. I can do gcloud projects add IAM policy binding, yeah, without the S, and then Garett MacGowan, and then member is going to be service account automated blog service account at Garett /MacGowan dash dot im.gservice account.com. Hopefully that's right. End quote. Role equals quote roles /storage.admin. This is going to give our service account the rights it needs to be able to read, write, delete, all that stuff to our Google Cloud storage. Let's see if that worked. I missed a T. There we go. Okay, so we've added that role. You can see right here. And now we're going to want to create a key that we can save in the repository in our credentials folder that will give this program access. So gcloud IAM service accounts keys create cloud storage credentials .json. That's going to be the name of the file that we're going to have load up. Right. And then IAM account equals automated blog service account. And then we're going to say at Garett MacGowan.im.gservice account.com. That's going to create our key. And we'll see that it should have been created in this folder here. Yep, it has. So I'm just going to drag this into the credentials and close that out. Okay. I think that should be okay now. I'm hoping that I don't have to specify the path to that file, but we'll see. So I'm going to run this code now. I think it's done, and we'll see if the content gets uploaded to my Cloud bucket. Let's just hit run, and I'll get back to you once it's done. Okay, so I'm back. I just realized that I want to add one more feature to this. It's actually running right now still, but let's add a configuration for the amount of topics we want to generate, or blog posts, I guess, we want to generate per time this code runs. So in order to do that, all you really have to do is come in here to our topic list, and we can add some list slicing, and we can create a config. So self.config. Get int, and we're going to do general again. And we can say, I don't know, post count. And we'll put that in our config. Post count equals, let's just make it 1 for now. So next time this code runs, we'll just have one piece of content being generated and uploaded rather than 10 or whatever it was before. So, okay, I will come back again once this is done and we can check out if the content has been uploaded. I'm back, but I made a few mistakes. So let's go through them quickly. First thing is I shouldn't have put the fake blog thing here because it's going to generate the content based on this title, and I don't want it to generate content based on a fake blog prompt every single time. So I'm going to move that out of there and down into this content dictionary section here. So let's do an F string here and add it not dynamically. Just like that. Cool. So now this won't be used, this fake blog section won't be used to generate the content. And then the other piece, we forgot to call this upload content function, so it wouldn't have uploaded to the cloud. So let's do that. We're going to have to do self.upload content, and we're going to pass in the content list. Content list equals content. Now I get to run it. One other thing I changed is just looking here. Just for this test, I'm putting the desired length down to 128, but when I actually deploy it, I'm probably going to put it back up to 5,000. The only difference is it's going to take longer to generate the 5,000 than it is the 128. So we get to see what happens faster here. So I'll be right back when it's done, and then I think we can wrap up this video. Okay, I'm back for the last time, I promise. So I've realized that I do need to specify the path to the credentials file. And the way we can do that is by adding another environment variable. So we're going to come in here. If it ever opens, there we go. The environment variable key needs to be Google application credentials. And the value is going to be a fully qualified path to this credentials file. So we can get that by coming over here. Let me just apply that for a second so we can right click on this file, copy path / reference. And we're going to get the absolute path and then edit our configuration, come in here, put the value. That's the fully qualified path. And we can apply that and run it one last time and it should work. So let's just see. Okay, so check this out. Our code ran to completion. And if we open up our Google Cloud Storage, we can see that we now have a new folder called Automated Blog. And we've got our title as the file name. And if we click into it to our public URL, we can see that we've got our JSON with our title, our link, and our content. So this concludes the first part of our 3-part series. In the next video, we're going to talk about deploying this code to the virtual machine. And in the last part, we will create a web page or add a page to my website that will automatically load up these blogs and post them. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.